1. I'm not usually petty, but if you mess with my fiancé, Paul, 21-year-old male, watch your back. So about 4 years ago, I, a 21-year-old female, moved in with my in-laws. Stepmother, stepsister, 25, Jess, and her boyfriend, and mine. All went well until Jess got dumped. She started getting jealous that her little brother got to be loved and not hers, so the drama began. She started to say that he was selfish and that I shouldn't have lived with him anymore because she didn't have the same luck as him. On top of that, she did everything she could to mess with Paul and I, meaning she would use the bathroom just so we couldn't get ready for work, put our toothbrushes in the toilet, set 23 alarms from 4 o'clock to 6 just to wake up at 8, leave her stuff on the counters and wouldn't participate in keeping the place clean. Her jealousy got even worse when Paul got a new car. She had to have one too, exactly the same. We tried multiple times to talk to her, without any results. One day I cleaned the kitchen and put her lottery tickets that she bought in March, but were in May, on the table so she could finally bring them with her, after her mother asked 4 times to take care of it. Fast forward, she wrote a note saying that I was just a bitch and I shouldn't touch her things, that I should stop acting like I owned the place. On that same night, she hurt my cat's leg by stepping on him. It couldn't be an accident. That's when I started to plan my little but sour revenge. I'd had enough of her childish behavior. To resume, I made her life miserable without anyone noticing. She always said that the dog was hers and not the family's, even though she never took care of him. I made him mine. Now she can't even approach him without the risk of being bitten. Don't worry, it's fine with everyone else. For her mother, I cleaned the house, but I didn't touch any of Jess's belongings, which means that her mother always sees that Jess hasn't done anything in the house, but complain. After having enough of Jess's trash everywhere, her mom asked her to change or leave. Jess is leaving in 2 months. She just didn't know which place to go. I said not to move into a certain town because of the traffic. And guess where she's going? Exactly where I told her not to. That is perfect because that is what I wanted. The traffic will only get more intense because there will be a lot of streets that will be renovated, and she doesn't know that. Since I know she's going away, I took the liberty to buy, because I'm always nice with her, and mess with all of the boxes. I made them weaker by making small holes in the bottom so that when she lifts them, they all open and possibly, hopefully, break her stuff. Also, she has a habit of creating diseases for herself. Before it was a problem with her stomach. After it was diabetes, her friend's boyfriend had it. And now she is a hypochondriac. So, to keep up with all of her lies, she has to act like she's sick. Every time I get the chance, I talk about a new or unknown disease to make her panic. That makes her buy lots of pills, and no, she doesn't take them. Lastly, I make her buy a lot of stuff that isn't useful. I talk a lot about trendy things I would like to get. She always gets them to make me jealous. It got to the point where she had to take out a loan to pay for her credit card, about $1,500. She officially leaves in 1 month. 2. First of all, let's get to the context. It was the 5th year of elementary school. At that time, I was constantly bullied by my whole class because of my size, and my teacher never did anything to help me, which means I really hated everyone. One thing I have to make clear is that I always had gas at school. I studied in the afternoon, and I always had lunch before going to school. And at that lunch, I always had beans or red meat, which always gave me stomach aches. I would tell my mother not to make these foods, but it was all we had, so nothing could be done. Context given. Story time. It was the last day of school, and since there was no 6th grade on that school, it was my last day at that place. So I grabbed that chance hard. It was a very hot day, so I knew the air conditioning would be used, i.e. closed room, perfect setting. That day I made a point of having extra lunch. When my mother questioned why, I simply said I was very hungry, and went to school. When I arrived, I suffered my usual bullying, but I didn't care. I was prepared. The class starts. They close the door and windows, everything I expected. A few minutes later, I felt a strong flutter in my stomach. I knew something was coming, so I let out the first fart, long and silent, right under the air conditioner. At first, I didn't think anyone cared, until I let go again, and again, and again. The smell was starting to spread throughout the room. I was about to burst with stomach pain, but it was worth it. The teacher started complaining, "Okay, who is farting?" And there was no answer until they decided to open the windows. Only when they opened the room, it got very hot, even with the air conditioning. So they decided to leave it closed anyway. I had stopped farting by then, until recess. The recess today was special. Hot dog with cheap grape juice. I took advantage of the chance. I ate as much as I could, drank as much juice as possible, exchanged the cookies I had brought for other people's hot dogs, and ate everything quickly as possible. At that time, I felt like a balloon 100% full, about to burst. The second period of class begins, windows and doors closed, air conditioning on, crowded class. Same thing as always. It was time for me to start my show again. I farted, this time in a very rotten way, and the farts were long and deep, as well as silent. My speciality until today. There were only a few minutes left until the end of class, and the teacher would not release the class until they admitted who was farting so much. It was the last day of school. I hated that whole class, and I would never see all those people again, so I did something I still don't regret. I got up from the chair and stood in front of the teacher. I lifted my leg and let out the most monstrous and smelly fart of my entire life. The class started laughing. Some started cursing me, but I didn't care. I explained to the teacher that I farted on purpose and was sent to the principal. My mother had to pick me up that day. When she found out about the story, she started laughing and said, "Now that I know that, I can't let you eat my food again." It turns out I went to a new school that respected me this time, and I never had to fart like that again. 3. I used to live in a multi-level apartment complex in a large city that is well known for having very expensive car parking. I had 2 dedicated car parking spaces, back to back, allocated to my apartment. I used to sublease the car park space to a friend that would park his car on workdays. Often on a Friday night, he would taxi home after Friday night drinks and leave his car. He would then come in on the Saturday or Sunday and pick it up. Often, he would park me in, but this wasn't an issue as we had access to each other's cars. A new neighbor moved into the complex, and unfortunately for me, that neighbor turned out to be a real dick. They would often see my spaces free and park me in or tell their visitors to park me in. I would often have to call them or go see them and ask for them to move their cars. It became such an issue that I had them on speed dial. We tried several things to stop them parking in our spots, such as putting in bollards or parking in the front spot and moving the cars when we needed to park. But they would end up parking us in and parking illegally. My friend got so frustrated and said he would stop subleasing from me, which was not a big deal, as it was only an arrangement for convenience for both of us. In Australia, it is very difficult to enforce parking on private property. It is basically illegal to tow, clamp, or detain a car. So building management couldn't really help, besides putting warning stickers and writing letters. I talked to a lot of the residents in the complex, and they were having the same problems. Cue revenge. I joined the Strata Committee, which consists of all the owners, and after 6 months, got elected as the president, which wasn't hard as only a handful of residents would actively participate. I then got the common areas, which included visitor parking to be managed by the council. We had to pay a fee, but it was worth it. When the council started to patrol the common areas, the offending cars got fined pretty heavily till they were removed. I saw at least 5 tickets, each approximately $250, on 3 of the cars. In addition, one of the cars wasn't even registered and was ticketed for abandonment, and was eventually removed. This didn't resolve the private car parking issues, So I had bylaws drafted that if residents let visitors into a private car park instead of using the visitor parking, their access would be reassessed. This meant that their access, fobs, keys, would be disabled until the residents confirmed and accepted the bylaws. This meant that the offending residents, which were renters, were constantly calling their landlord and complaining as we disabled the fobs every time we caught them using it to let visitors in. Of course, it took 24 hours and an administrative fee to reactivate the fobs. Eventually, I got the car park upgraded and the car park key fob system removed and replaced with number plate identification instead. I've since moved out, but as I still own the property, and am still on the strata committee, I am still well informed. I am happy to report that there are no more parking issues. 4. This happened last year. Applied for a clerical job and surprisingly got hired despite having no qualifications in said position nor field of work. However, I have some experience in clerical work from a previous job. They said they urgently needed someone to fill a supervising role of sorts for a big job coming up. But really, I'm just a glorified clerk. Should have noticed the red flags, to be honest. First day in, empty offices. I was the only one there. Big man comes in and showed me the pathetic excuse of an office. It was more of a space to store equipment and products with some cubicles. Who am I to judge? The pandemic hit all of us hard. Job was very laid back. Draft up some quotes, fill out this or that form, accompany big man to sites, write a report, and that's it. Let me introduce big man. He's rotund and not in a lovable way, crass and generally POS man-child. The kind of POS that changes lanes without using turn signals and spewing profanities at people when honked at. Well-mannered in front of clients, but berates you in the office. The wouldn't think twice to throw you under a bus type. He's also big man in name only. You'd expect him to at least know what he's doing. Sometimes I don't know if he knows what he wants. A quote can give up to 30 revisions simply because he didn't like a sentence being put together, or add another zero at the end. Or how about we take out that zero? You know what? Add that zero back in. On the phone, type it as I say, berates me for adding that zero because he forgot he requested it yesterday. And somehow it's still my fault, when I'm slow with submitting the docs when he's too stupid to make up his goddamn mind, sure. Clearly he's lashing out on something unrelated to work, and is finding an excuse to have a punching bag. When he tore me a new one because I didn't take notes, I started recording voice notes whenever he was in the office or when taking his calls. Mainly because he could say one thing at 9 a.m. and then be saying another by 4 p.m. So at least I had evidence of his stupidity the next time he decides to verbally assault me. And he did not disappoint. 2 weeks into the 6th month I worked, he came in and hands me my notice. He assures me that he'll be paying the 2 weeks I've worked and I'll be getting my money by the end of the week. And a week went by and I have yet to get my pay. I ask him about it and his response just rubs me the wrong way.
I told you I'll pay you and I will. You'll get your damn money in due time.
I changed his name to Pig in my contacts because if he looks like one and acts like one, then he is. I'm pissed because before I left, I know for a fact that a client just paid him for the previous job, and he went and took his family out to dinner and a vacation, and couldn't be bothered to pay my 2 weeks. This is where I fucked up. I changed his contact name, but didn't realize I haven't logged out of WhatsApp on the company laptop. A month went by and I contemplated going to the labor office for a formal complaint, and according to the labor laws here it is actionable if a salary isn't cleared within a month. But decided I should ask one more time. He replied back with a video showing that I called him a pig and saying how ungrateful I was that he graciously offered me a job, putting food on my table, etc. Now in my culture, profanity is a serious offense and it certainly didn't help my case in asking for money. But I simply replied back to him with a voice note of him calling me a shit stain. Got my pay by the end of the week. 5. Backstory. My ex-wife was a special kind of lady, with that almost unbelievable type of crazy you only see in movies. There was a matching crazy sex drive with it too, though. I had caught her cheating multiple times over the few years we were married, as well as doing some pretty hard substance drugs while I traveled for work, and she stayed at home to watch her 2 kids from a previous marriage and our child. I chose to believe the "I'll change" stuff too many times, foolishly. Mostly because her older 2 were like my own. Their father passed from cancer while they were still young. And also because she had my child and I didn't want her growing up in a broken home like I did. Opportunity presented itself for a fresh start with a relocation far away from the rat hole she grew up in, with all her connections and bad habits of her past. We agreed to move the family there and take a nice promotion, and give her the chance to get in a new environment and work towards change. She didn't. The act. Fast forward a year, and much is still the same as it was. She had taken up redoing furniture to try and sell it instead of getting a real job, which meant spending a lot of time making runs to a local store that resold and donated innards of houses that were getting remodeled. There she met... let's call him Javier. She even introduced me to him on one of the visits as the helpful associate who always helps her load up on the heaviest stuff she bought into her truck. Needless to say, my slimy sense was tingling. At this point, I had this gut feeling every time she found someone new she was going to eventually cheat on me with. She was mid-30s and afraid to get old and undesirable, so she would pick out guys about 10 years younger so she could still think she had it. Javier fit the bill, and also looked oddly similar to her deceased husband. Roll forward another 3 months, and the arguing was getting too much for me. She also started insinuating that she would lie to CPS that I was touching her children, so I would never see my daughter again. Or purposefully inflict harm on herself and threaten to say it was me. By this time, I was smart enough to start secretly recording this stuff with my phone so I could avoid major issues down the road. It ultimately saved me and won me full custody in the divorce, but that's for another time. A week later, just prior to Thanksgiving, not only one of my favorite holidays, but we were all completely alone in terms of family except each other. She started the fight as a way to spend it with Javier's family. I wasn't aware anything had started on that front yet. Her oldest kids were accustomed to these crazy acts by now, and she didn't fear them telling me. My daughter was only 2. A couple days later, I found out, after spending a lonesome Thanksgiving with my hungry man turkey dinner, what really happened. The fight was huge. I was done, and she knew she had gone too far. I was filing for divorce on Monday. It was Saturday. She was able to take one of my texts I sent after she pulled over on a 4-lane busy road with our youngest so she could kick me out and walk 4 miles home, and convince a police officer to arrest me to get me out of the house for the night. Our city has 24/7 judges, though, and I was out by noon on Sunday on $100 bail as it was a nothing charge. She thought I was gone till Monday at minimum. I didn't call home, just took an Uber. I show up, and lo and behold, Javier had come to spend the night. At this point, it was laughable, and I knew what she was capable of, so I video recorded before I even entered the house. He left, then I left as the kids had school coming Monday. Monday, I filed for divorce. Tuesday, I appear in court for my initial hearing for the arrest over the weekend. She requested a temporary restraining order on me at the hearing, and the courts granted until the real trial. I was forced out of my home and also forced to keep paying the bills except food, while the divorce went on, lawyer's advice. I was given 6 hours on Wednesday by the court to get as much of my stuff out of the house as I could. I was leaving that same day for a multi-week out-of-town job too, so I couldn't really take a lot. Anything I left behind, I was at risk of never getting again. Now, I definitely needed work clothes and some street clothes, but I could maybe only take 2 or 3 suitcases of things at best. Cue the PettyRevenge. Over the 4 years we had dated and been married, we had accumulated quite a large collection of fun adult toys. somewhere in the ballpark of $3,000 to $4,000 worth. And most of it was kept in a big trunk that looked like a magician's case. Well, that stuff was mine just as much as it was hers. I had bought it all for her, and she loved this stuff, with or without others' involvement. She kept her favorites hidden in different places, though, like her closet inside a shoe rack. It was strange. I packed what I really wanted in about an hour and a half. Spent the next 2 hours searching for all her hidden favorites. I cleaned out the place of anything explicit and tossed it all in the large trunk. I left with time to spare, and the bed of my truck loaded with my work gear, some suitcases, and her special trunk. I drove about 5 hours to get to the hotel of the job I was going on, and after I checked in, I saw the big green dumpster back in the corner. I pulled my truck around, backed up, and hoisted the 80-pound monster into the bin, and smiled. It wasn't a lot, but it felt really good to have gotten at least one leg up on her, as I knew she would be furious to not have anything to help her de-stress from her life about to be falling apart. The case was eventually dropped against me when she wrote a letter to the DA stating I was fine and she wasn't afraid of me. That's the only way they'd drop it, so she could get my help with the kids as she struggled to find work. I wasn't going to violate the TRO for any reason. I ultimately won full custody of my daughter as well, when all was said and done. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 259. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, if you please boop that like button for me, I would appreciate it. I hear the birds starting to sing now. Almost 5:30 in the morning. But there's another video to be recorded, so we must. Alrighty, let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, do you ever just lose inspiration to cook? It's like, you know you've gotta eat, and you want to eat, but your mind just goes blank when you think about what to do. I've been there a bit lately. I can cook things, I know how to cook things, and eating is just so... It's a chore. I think what I need is fresh ideas, recipes, healthy ideas as well, and things that I can do reasonably quickly, so I will be investigating. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.